Okay, here we are, episode 12 of the What Do We Do podcast. Kyle Bogey, Dewey Stefan, and we are matching for episode 12. How about this? For anyone that's watching on the video, both in pink. That means it's going to be a good day, right?
Bogey, real men wear pink. Have you heard this? I don't know if it's true or not, but we're going to go with that today, okay? Hey, everybody, Dewey Stefan here.
What a start to the episode. Look, we got a pretty detailed dive into what it takes to save for your children's college fund. It is one of the most important things that you can do, and it's one of those things that you need to get started on as early as humanly possible. So we are going to pick Dewey's brain here over the next 25 or 30 minutes because it really is, Dewey, just initially, your thoughts. It is one of the most important things that you can possibly do in your life is to try to set your kids up to go to college.
Well, absolutely. With the cost to go to college as high as it is.
And only going up.
Only going up. They say 3 to 5% a year is very low-end inflation on higher learning prices. So, yes, indeed.
And just, I guess the initial thoughts on that, it's amazing to me how much these institutions continue to raise tuition, continue to raise costs for everything, room and board, whatever it takes. To me, it has gotten completely priced out, even though it is a great investment and it's something, you absolutely should do if you're going into specific fields. But it's out of this world that we're setting people up potentially, unless you can have an unbelievable savings plan, setting people up to immediately go into a ton of debt. And then, by the way, you're going to get a mortgage probably after that and go into a little bit more. It is an incredible system that we have, but that's why it's so important what we're going to talk about today, and that's saving for your kids' college fund.
You got it, Bogey. And so we're going to do our best to go through, again, the different vehicles you can use to help you save for college, right? We'll talk a little bit about the price it costs now and maybe will cost in the future for college. We'll also talk about the pros and the cons of even going to college anymore, right? With all that's going on now with COVID-19 and virtual learning, there's a lot of new data that is out there that suggests that if you're paying the full price, you should get the full experience. If you're not going to get the full experience, you shouldn't have to pay the full price. And so we'll kind of go real quick into some of the pros and cons out there of even is a higher degree, worth it the same way it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, et cetera. So it'll be fun. And let's get into it.
A lot to chew on. And again, we appreciate you guys subscribing, downloading, sharing, commenting, liking, all the feedback that we have been getting from you guys on the What Do We Do podcast. It really is appreciated. And again, if you're looking for more information, some good reading material, you want to find out a little bit more about what Great Lakes Wealth does here and what Dewey and his team do, you can go to greatlakeswealth.us. So I guess for starters, let's start with when you want to actually begin thinking about saving for college. So, my situation, I turned 30, almost a year ago. I'll be 31 in a couple of weeks, actually. And I just had my first child, okay, just a few months back. I didn't start thinking about even potentially remotely saving for, my future, child's college fund up until we actually had her. Is that a mistake? Should people, even before you have a child, is this something that you should be considering before you even start thinking or trying to have a baby?
Great question. And we have actually advocated that before you start planning for your child's education, you better be planning for your own retirement, right? A child can either get loans, figure out school if it's a newborn, in 18 years or whatever. But before we start worrying about the next generation, we need to start worrying about ourselves. And so we've mentioned this in prior episodes across the board, especially as it relates to COVID-19. But number one, before we recommend any investor start to tackle child's education, they need to make sure that they have all their own debt paid off, right? You need to have 3 to 6 months of escrow cash in the bank put aside for a rainy day. We talked about how that would have lessened the blow of the COVID-19 pandemic when it hit March, April, May, if you would have had that 3 months set aside, or 6 months, here we go, we would have been way better off and less panicked otherwise.
And that's not, to say that, you are preparing for the worst or you having negative thoughts or anything. It's just, you know what? It allows you to sleep at night if you have that backing. If you know, okay, something crazy could happen, company could go out of business, I could lose my job, pandemic could happen. You know that you and your family are covered for at least 3 to 6 months if you have to go on a job hunt. And that really is nice peace of mind to have.
Unexpected costs, whatever they may be, right? So you have to have 3 to 6 months put aside if you want to start building a financial future the right way. Next is, again, we talked about retiring debt or renegotiating your debt, whether that's on your mortgage on your home, certainly high interest bearing credit cards. But in this day and age, when you can get a mortgage lower than 4%, you should be able to have all of your debts that are serviceable at very fair rates because rates have come down so much. So number one, 3 to 6 months of unexpected costs set aside, put in a bank as escrow, and then pay off your debt or renegotiate your debt to very favorable terms, especially in this environment. And then third, we talked about in one of those prior episodes, Bogey, about investing in your 401k, 403b, or retirement vehicle through work, right? And then if they do a match, you certainly better put in up to amount that they will match. That's free money. But even if they don't match, before you start putting money away for junior, you better put some money away for senior. The big dog before the puppy dog. You follow me?
Forget about the kids for a second,
That's
right? We got to worry about ourselves and our future comfort.
No, and again, it's a hard.
I'm kidding.
It's a hard analysis to make.
Yeah.
And it's not singular, but in the big picture, you have to take care of those that are older before you take care of those that are younger. Set yourself up, or again, I don't know if it's not really a cliche, but it's kind of something funny. You will be moving in with your kids when you are retired. You're going to move in with them, and they're going to have to take care of you because you didn't have enough to take care of yourself.
Well, but that's also incentive to save for their college fund because, you want them to be incredibly successful and have the money to be able to take you in and take care of you down the line, right?
Perhaps. I love my
it's an
3
investment
children.
on both ends.
I love my 3 children, and we hope wonderful things for their future, but I don't know if I expect to be moving in with any of them ever. We'll see what happens, but with that, let's get into again some of the simple numbers of saving for college. Fair enough.
So again, once you are taking care of or renegotiating some of the debts that you may have, making sure that you have 3 to 6 months ready to go in case, like rainy day fund essentially, or just something happens, something life changing ultimately changes. Make sure you have all of that ready to go. And then start looking at potentially saving, for your child or for your children potentially because you have 3. So once you get to that point, then what are you considering and what, should you be looking at in investing in?
Yeah, so then you need to go and look at what it is you're trying to solve for. And so in this case, it's solve for college, right? So you need to go and figure out what is it going to cost. And you can go all over the internet. You can go to our website, greatlakeswealth.us, for some calculators. But all over the internet are places where you can go to get assumed costs for future years of college, depending on your child's age, to the current cost, right? And so with that, it's estimated that this year, a 4-year public school on average will be $26,590. Let's round that up to $27,000 for this coming year in the fall, if it happens. And in a private institution is over $50,000, right? $53,980. Let's just round that up $20 to $54,000. That's for 1 year.
First of all, I'll be the jerk. What a racket,
right?
It's unbelievable. Go ahead.
Well, again, it is a racket, but again, the pros of going to college, there are many, and we'll get into them. So it's a racket, but you could argue that it's a racket for your home. It's a racket for cars you drive, country clubs that you might belong to. So you'd also need to very seriously prioritize your dollars and make sure that you're putting the essentials before the non-essentials. They do liken going to college the next biggest thing to buying a home. So you need to make that decision, and if you can help your child make that decision on the way, all the more power to you, and it's fantastic. So we now can calculate and go out to the year 2028, 2029. So let's call it 10 years out. So if now, this year, a 4-year public institution is $27,000 per year to go to school, and it'll increase each year during the 4 years, just so you know. But it's estimated that in the year 2028, 2029, it will be $41,000 to go to a public institution and $84,000 rounded to go to a 4-year private school. This is all according to the College Board, by the way. So do the math, times it by 4, times it by 5 if you're going to double major, triple major. And it's going to cost a lot of money, right? So you got to tackle it. And they say a cliche out there, how do you eat an elephant, Bogey? Have you heard this?
No.
How do you eat an elephant?
I haven't heard that.
One bite at a time. Okay. You haven't heard that one? Well, there we go. Fantastic. So with your saving for college and saving for your retirement, another episode, one bite at a time, one day at a time, and just do what you can, little by little.
Well, I'm glad I didn't have coffee in my mouth as you were throwing out those numbers. And again, you can check this out at greatlakeswealth.us because the college costs are just absolutely soaring. So you also, on the website, have a little bit of a breakdown of how much potentially you could put in, each month, $100, $300, $500, whatever you want to essentially put in. And then over the years, how much it will grow 3, 5, 7, 10 years down the line to make sure that there's enough money in there for college once, your son or daughter turns 18, correct?
Yes, but before we get into how you pay for this large number, we first, as we said, need to figure out when your child's going to go to school. Is it 2020, 2025, 2030? So then let's go and we will do a calculator to figure out what the assumed cost is, right? And then we can discuss whether you need to pre-fund or fully fund those 4 years. We kind of take an approach of start with just targeting half of it. Target half, and hopefully it's not when they're 17 and they're going to be going in 1 year to make up the other half. But rather than, again, trying to eat the whole elephant, if you will, just try, again, to target half.
One bite at a time.
One bite at a time. But with that, there are multiple, I'm going to say 7, 8, 9 different strategies that you can pursue to help you cover these costs, right? Some programs out there are specific for college planning. You may get some tax deductions for doing it. You might get the opportunity to prepay at today's prices for tomorrow's university costs. So I'm going to go through those real fast just so listeners can write them down, and then we'll talk about how you kind of do the math to figure out how you get to the end of the payment plan. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so one of the
I'm following your lead today.
Yeah, well, good. Well, again, one of the most common plans is called the Coverdale Plan, the Coverdale Educational Savings Account, known as the ESA. And so this is a plan where you can put up to $2,000 away a year. So it's not a mega amount of money. You're not going to cover all the costs with just the $2,000 per year per child. There are some maximum income requirements that are there as well. But to start with the Coverdale, that actually isn't just for post 12 or your higher education of college. You can also use some of it for the K through 12 as well. Anyway, so usually one of the first starting points is at the Coverdale Educational Savings Account, known as the ESA. After you've explored the Coverdale, then kind of the most spoken of or understood these days as a vehicle is the 529 plan, 529 plan. Have you heard of this one?
I have.
Okay, and the 529 actually has two different components. One is kind of pay as you go, and the other one is prepaid. So a prepaid 529 plan to start with, you can actually go to the state that you are looking at, and you actually don't have to be figuring out what state your child will go to college in. You just go to the state that you're in currently, that you live in, and you can type in, and they will tell you if you put in X today, we will guarantee your child can go to school down the road based upon his or her age. So Blake's not even 1, right? But you can calculate out 17 years, and you can do the math, and it's a discount. So as long as you come up with the money today, right, you can get maybe half off. So let's just say the 4-year college in-state is going to be, I don't know, $150,000 down the road. Okay, depending on her age and how many semesters and this and that. You might be able to write one check now, if you could, for, say, $65,000, $70,000, right? So maybe just less than half of what it would cost.
Okay.
So if you have that money sitting around, write the check. The state of Michigan would guarantee that your child could go for, again, whether it's one semester or two. So you can do all these calculations and prepay for the college. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So you just have to kind of do an analysis to see if the time value of money is better spent with the state or with you and those types of things. But in Michigan, it's called the MET, Michigan Educational Trust, MET, right? And so the prepaid, one option. Any parents out there that have parents or the child's grandparents, maybe a little whisper in their ear, hey, grandma, grandpa, little 529 prepaid, what do you think? Is always a solution too. And we are serious that there are a lot of grandparents out there that do try to help out their grandchildren. And we'll talk here in a few minutes about ways they can do that without having to write a big old check. But prepaid 529 is one. Okay. The pay-as-you-go 529, the more standard 529 is where you just put the money in. You as the adult own it. The majority person is the owner of the account, and there's a beneficiary, which is the child. And you can put in a big chunk. You can put in a little bit each month, do what you want to do. And it's always the person of majorities, the adult's money. But if it's benchmarked for and used for that beneficiary and their college expenses, then whatever it grows to, there's no taxes on that withdrawal. And very similar to a 401k or 403b or other type of traditional investment, you can put it into mutual funds or other vehicles that could grow it. So you with me so far?
Yeah, absolutely. Is that something then too? Because I've heard about this, and I know some of my family, some friends' family, and all that will do, instead of getting 7 birthday presents or 7 Christmas presents every year, you get 4 or 5 presents, and then you toss $50 in, I'm assuming, an account like this, correct?
Hi, this is Dewey Stuffin, CEO of Great Lakes Wealth. At Great Lakes Wealth, we believe that now, more than ever, it's so important to support our local economy. As a local business ourselves, we are dedicated to helping other small businesses not just survive, but thrive. There are several ways that we can all support our community. Order takeout or curbside delivery. Buy a gift card and use it later. Tip service workers extra. Add local goods to your grocery list. Visit online stores and shop. Today, more than ever, local businesses need our help. They are the heartbeat of our community. Let's all do what we can, as many hands make for light work. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Right. And I mentioned that in one of our prior episodes, that's a great technique that a parent can do without, asking their parents or asking, person to person for some money. Just suggest that, hey, we have a college account set up, 529. Here's the account
if you'd
number.
like to.
If you'd like to, $25, $50, whatever the case is. And so again, rather than another teddy bear or
we don't need all these toys. I don't have a big enough house for 5 or 7 toys from every person.
Right. Well,
crazy.
When Blake's sleeping, you play with them a little bit, have some fun, right? Yeah. No, so that is a way where you don't have to have a lot of money to just start. And number one at Great Lakes Wealth, we say whatever you're doing, first thing is start now. Start now. So you can, again, go to MESP, Michigan Educational Savings Plan, MESP, and they have a state plan for Michigan. Just Google your state, Google the plan. There are other benefits besides tax-free growth. If it's used for college, depending on the state you're in, you might get a tax deduction for putting money in. Each state is different. You don't have to, again, invest in the state's plan that you live in. You can pick other ones. You don't just want to do it, arbitrarily and haphazardly. Do your work, as we always say, do your work. Talk to a professional. There are all kinds of strategies in investing in the 529 plan, but absolutely for as little as $25 a contribution, you can get on your way.
So, and this is probably something that you're going to get to anyway, but I'm just going to jump ahead to it, perhaps, and maybe go out of turn. Once you actually have the money in the account, then annually it's going to go up by what percentage? How much is the compound interest essentially going to be?
Well, that's great. It depends on what you invest in. So all these plans, the benefits are, again, money in the bank earns 0.5% if you're lucky right now. So again, with a diversified portfolio, all of these plans have options where you can be in cash or a stable value or something where you just don't lose what's in there, but you can try to grow it. You can aggressively grow. Typically here at Great Lakes Wealth, we recommend you go with the age-based plan that they offer. So the younger the beneficiary, the younger the child, if you will, the more it's going to be in the stock market because they have time on their side, right? So the market goes up and down, but it averages, close to 8 or 9% per year over the last 100 years, give or take the market we're talking about. So 8 or 9 per year versus money in the bank at 0.8 or 0.9 a year, maybe give a little bit more than that over time. But you're better off, again, investing in a diversified portfolio. And so if the child is, 1 years old, the majority of the money might be in the market with just a little bit in bonds or safer investments, right? If the child is 17 years old, then the majority of that money has been just rotated over time and moved into where maybe almost all of it is in the safe pile and just a little bit is in the investment pile, so that you're not going to have this situation of timing where the child's going to school and it happened to be, March 1st of this year. So a sequence challenge can be avoided by going with the age-based plan. So as the child ages, the portfolio becomes more and more conservative. So we typically recommend that, and then you can override it. So if there's a market drop like we had, and you've done your work and talked to your advisor, you can then go more equity. And same thing, if you're at a high point or a situation where you really recognize you can't have a major drawdown or it may affect a larger plan, then you can, again, rotate it all out of the market. But general, let the markets be your friend over time.
Is there, with these different plans, is it a specific percentage, a specific number? Is it, is it just depending on what program you're actually going with, how much it will grow, each year over the next several years?
So again, none of it's guaranteed growth.
Yeah.
It's all random. It's just, again, for the listeners out there, think of it as another version of your 401k or your 403b or any other type of mutual fund
There's
investment
going to be
account.
ebbs and flows.
Yep. And the more you add, the more you quote unquote dollar cost average. You've heard us talk about that before. The more you put in over time, you'll smooth that out. But either way, you got to get started, and you don't have to put in $10,000, $25,000, or $50,000. You can put in $100, $200, $500, and you'll get to the same finish line. Just a whole different way of getting to the same place.
So you mentioned a couple of those plans. Are there any other plans specifically that you have discussed that you advise people to look into?
Yes, we're going to mention a handful of other ones. We're not going to stay on them very long at all. Feel free, again, to talk to your financial professional. Do the work. Again, GreatLakesWealth.us has a lot of resources. We have calculators. We have white papers on this. We also have 4 or 5 different types of white papers that aren't on the website, but we can certainly get you them easily. And they talk about the sticker shock, creative ways to lower the cost of college. How will I manage to send my child to college, right? How grandparents can help grandchildren with college costs, etc. So we have a lot of resources. This is, after, again, retirement planning, this is probably the second most important type of planning you can do. So with that, some of the other plans, besides the Coverdale Educational Savings Account and the 2 529 plans, prepaid and pay-as-you-go, there are custodial accounts. So these are called UGMA or UTMA, Unified Gift to Minor accounts, or Unified Trust to Minor accounts. And these are accounts that are actually in the child's name. And so there are some tax benefits, but there are also some ownership challenges. This is money that once it's in an UGMA or an UTMA, it is the child's money, and whether they're 5 or 15 or 25. So it's not necessarily benchmarked for education, but there are some tax advantages. So that's one. Another one would just be a Roth IRA or an educational savings bond, even a traditional IRA, then ultimately a taxable account. So you can have a savings account for Blake, a savings account for Johnny. You could have a Roth IRA strategy in place. You can have educational savings bonds. You can have taxable accounts. All of these are other. You could have an insurance policy technically. So there's a lot of different ones, but the main ones, again, are the Coverdale Educational Savings Account, the 529 plans, and the UGMA or UTMA.
With the Roth IRA, is it different if you're saving for college for educational purposes? Because, when you invest in a Roth IRA, it's what, 65 or, whatever, that's when you can tap into it? Or is there one withdraw where it's tax-free?
So great question. So the Roth IRA, you never have to determine an age to take the money out. So a traditional IRA at 59 and a half, you can take it out without penalty. This year with COVID-19 and the CARES Act, you don't have to be 59 and a half. You can take up to 100,000 out sooner without that penalty. That was a subject, of a prior podcast. But as it relates to this, the Roth IRA is not, again, a primary funding vehicle for college savings. However, it is a strategy where you can put money in, and then there are your ability to take out your principal without any taxation, let the profits continue to grow. So again, it's not a primary strategy, but it's certainly one that sophisticated investors that have complicated situations can explore.
Okay, so what I guess other important things would you emphasize here? Obviously working with clients, even here at Great Lakes Wealth, what would you want to pinpoint and, make sure people know when it comes to saving for their child's college fund?
So again, you start now and put in what you can and just do it consistently, right? Dollar cost average. Consider maybe the 529 plan would be, the most sought after vehicle because it's a smaller dollar amount that can go in, and you can have tax free growth as long as the proceeds end up going for the beneficiary, i.e. the child's college. So with that, we did some math, and we do have a white paper on monthly investments rather than one big lump sum, right? And you referred to it a few minutes ago there, Bogey. If you looking at today's cost, right? And again, we said that it'll be $27,000 for a public university for 1 year, and over $54,000 on average for a private year of school. One way to combat that would be to put in just $100 a month, okay? And as long as you have time, then you can help. Again, take a bite of that elephant, okay? So for this, we just assume, or we calculate a 6% annual return. So there's that compounded return that you talked about prior.
Yeah.
So if you put in $100 and do it every month at a 6% annual compounded rate, in 5 years, the $100 will have grown, per month, will have grown to $7,000, okay? Not going to fund the whole thing, but you're on your way.
Yeah.
Well, 10 years would be $16,000. And after 15 years would be $29,000. Okay, so now you've got 1 year of school perhaps covered. If you would have started it 15 years ago, and your child's heading away for 1 year at the University of Michigan this year.
Although, yeah, by the time Blake is 18, I'll be almost 50, which is very depressing. And it'll probably be, $50,000, maybe more than that by the time she's 18, which is crazy.
Yeah, so again, you have to do what you can, but know the math. So guess what? If you are diligent about saving, use the math and add a larger number. So $500 a month. After 5 years, you've got $35,000. After 10 years, you've got $82,000. And after that same 15-year period, you have $145,000. Again, estimate on these calculations that we talked about.
And that's taking a healthy chunk out of paying for, all 4 years right there.
For sure, right? And we talked maybe there's some scholarships. There's certainly tons of ways to get financial aid. And that, again, we'll be switching subjects here in a moment to talk about, what is the true cost of going to school and is it worth it? But in that regard, again, you need to start somewhere. And the sooner you get started, the better you'll be. But this is just an illustration of what is going to be happening, whether you like it or not.
And, since you brought it up, we can, I think, veer off a little bit from that discussion, unless there's something else that you want to make sure you pinpoint on saving and what you should be doing and when.
Just, again, do the work, talk to a professional, do the research online, and if you start a 529 plan, as you said, get little coupon books and pass them out with the invitation to the party, maybe, put a little colored pink paper clip in there for Blake, happy first birthday, and have a little coupon book in, what they say, right, in lieu of gifts,
yeah,
donating
yes.
money, in lieu of gifts donate to Blake's College Fund. So with that, again, just start a plan and don't bite off more than you can chew, and make sure you're also continuing with your retirement for sure, as well as having the 3 to 6 months of emergency funds set aside, and making sure that you've reconciled your debt and negotiated that properly.
Well, if my family's listening, you know what to expect then for Blake's first birthday next May. You mentioned it, and I find it to be a fascinating thing, and we don't have to get into too much detail necessarily, but you said outside of, I believe, buying a home, that going to college was, how did you phrase that, one of the most important things that you can do in your lifetime?
Well, I think they say it's like the second most expensive or the second most important decision financially.
That's what
to
it
buying
was.
a home, right? With that, right, especially in this day and age, I read a report over the weekend that said more than 93% of U.S. college students say tuition should be lowered if classes are online, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as we talked about in last week's episode about college football and if they're going to play or not going to play, it's the same thing with these colleges in terms of the classroom experience.
Yeah.
Right? Some schools, the marquee names like Harvard, are talking about it one way. Here locally, Eastern Michigan is talking about it a different way. And every week it seems like some of these rules may be changing, whether it's a virtual classroom to on-campus learning. So a lot that's going to be decided here in the next few weeks as the kids are heading to school, heading to campus, and whether they're going to be sitting in their dorm and just learning on the laptop, or they're going to be in a classroom auditorium.
And it 100% should be the case. And I don't know how you feel about it, but if you're doing online learning or you're doing Zoom sessions with your professor, and those are the classes that you're going to be doing, and you're doing them, in your pajamas, maybe at your parents' home because you don't even want to be in the dorm, it 1,000% should be less. Or less than it would normally be if you were on campus, room and board, going to the class, 3 days a week or whenever it is, because there's a lot more value in, and I can just speak for myself when, I was in college, having to force yourself to wake up. If you're a night owl, and you're up till, 3 in the morning hanging out, or maybe you're working late into the night or something, forcing yourself to get up at 7, being responsible, getting to class on time, getting yourself dressed, being in person, taking notes or typing notes, I guess, in this day and age. I think having that schedule and being able to coach yourself into getting used to that, that's as big as sitting there and learning about, finance.
I have a great quote that I want to share with you and our podcast listeners. Are you ready for this one?
This is exciting, yeah.
Are you ready for this one?
We should add like a drum roll here or something.
This is one that I say around my house all the time to my children, and it drives them nuts. But I tell them, you go to college to learn, but hopefully you get an education too. How about that? Deep.
Perfect.
Deep.
And
right?
it's true.
Deep, for sure. So you're absolutely correct. The experience, it's more than just the classroom. And I'll leave it at that.
Well, it's
on.
the pressure of being called upon, randomly or something, by that professor that wants to embarrass you. There's so many different factors. Presenting in front of a group of 200 students or 50 students if you go to a smaller college, that fear, being able to get over with and, in fact, deal with that is something that is going to be able to help you, I think, once you get to, here, the big leagues, here at Great Lakes Wealth even, or wherever you end up working potentially down the line. That's big.
Well, so again, it goes to the greater question of, do you even need college anymore? Some say that it's not worth the cost. It's not worth the debt. You don't even, again, in a normal environment, you don't learn as much as you would learn, in the school of hard knocks. There's another one. How about this thing, the School of Hard Knocks? Have you heard about this?
Mm-hmm.
Just get out there and do it. So there is quite a lot to debate on the subject for sure.
And it's debilitating. I mean, I don't want to sit here and complain and cry and all that. But student loans are, particularly the private ones, are absolutely debilitating when you're trying to advance and move forward and all that. So I get looking at both sides of it, looking at trade, looking at other things maybe that you could potentially do.
Well, I'm going to also refer our podcast listeners to a great website that would talk about the pros and the cons of going to college. It is procon.org and collegeeducation.procon.org. College education.procon.org does a great job of just explaining. Again, I think there's 17 pros and 17 cons to why you should go to college or not go to college. And as you talked about, it's the experience. There are some financial numbers I'm just going to go through real fast from them, which is college graduates earn an average of $78,000 a year, while the average earnings of a worker with only a high school diploma is $45,000 per year, right? So I don't know if that's 10 years after school or 20 years after school, but that's a substantial difference, $78,000 versus $45,000. A separate survey or a separate statistic from the Federal Reserve Bank in New York says that those that only have a high school graduation diploma are $30,000, while a bachelor's degree closer to $45,000. So whether it's a different time frame, but again, it's the same thing. It's almost a 50% discount if you don't have that college degree. So that's just a stat that's there. Also, an unemployment rate for Americans back in December 2019, so pre-COVID, if you had a bachelor's degree, the average unemployment rate for you was 1.9%. If you had an associate's degree, it was 2.7% unemployment. If you had a high school diploma only, it was 3.7% unemployment. And if you were a high school dropout, it was 5.2%. So again, some quick math or some quick statistics, I guess, to share with you about just earnings and employment, and take it for what it's worth.
Yeah, and look, if you want to look at the numbers for yourself, you can go to greatlakeswealth.us. It's all right there. I think we covered a great allotment of what you need to do, what you need to be thinking about, and a good discussion as well about saving for your child's education. That'll do it for another rendition of the What Do We Do podcast. Appreciate you guys subscribing, sharing, downloading, your comments, everything. It's been a fun ride here, 12 episodes in.
12 episodes in, and we're just getting started.
A lifetime to go.
Knowledge is power. Take it one day at a time. Have a great week. See you next time.
The opinions expressed in this program are for general information purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or any specific security. It's only intended to provide education about the financial industry. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your financial advisor prior to investing. Any past performance discussed during this program is no guarantee of future results. Any indices referenced for comparison are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. As always, please remember investing involves risks and possible loss of principal capital. Please seek advice from a licensed professional.